Before the end of this video, you'll have learned all about the future perfect. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Mr. Ian Teaches English. We're getting pretty close to the end of our verb lessons. Almost all of the verbs in English, we have 12, are in a playlist that you can find somewhere here to help you understand which tenses are necessary and the other advanced tenses. We only have a few more left. Today we are talking about the future perfect, which is not a necessary tense, but really good for being able to accurately and in very good detail describe the future. So I gave you an example in the very beginning of this video, so stick around. We're going to talk about this, and while you're here, go ahead and leave a comment, leave a question, leave a suggestion for a video that you would like me to do. So I'll stop talking so you can hear me talk about the future perfect. All right, everybody, let's talk about the future perfect. Now, to talk about the future perfect, let's go back and review all of the perfect tenses. In all of the perfect tenses, we will use have and the past participle for all of them. So, the future perfect will use the future of have and the past participle. Now, what's the future of have? It's will have, or it's possible to use going to for this. I'm going to have, he's going to have, but not very common. For most of these verb tenses here in English, the will is much more common in these advanced future tenses. All right, perfect tenses, all perfect tenses, also describe something that happens before a point in time. Present perfect describes something that happens before the present. Past perfect describes something that happens before the past. And future perfect, today's lesson, describes something that happens before a time in the future. So let's look at that form a little bit more closely. You'll see here the affirmative, the negative, and the questions. Now please notice the contractions. Now there's a little difference with the contractions here because not only do we contract the pronoun and the will, but we also contract the have. Now we don't write that though. So on the screen here, these are the the conjugations and the contractions that we write. As I'm talking today, as I read example sentences, pay attention to my pronunciation because I will also contract the have. For example, the I in the affirmative, I'll have plus past participle. You will actually hear me say olive and past participle. For the negative one, for I won't have past participle. You'll actually hear me say I won't have and past participle. Now it's important to know this difference because we do write it differently than we pronounce it. We don't write the second part of the contraction here. So go ahead and pause if you want to take another moment, a closer look at the form here. Now let's talk about the use. The good news is it's only used for one definition, but that definition can be a little difficult to explain and a little difficult to understand. But keep this key in your head, this idea of it happening before something else in the future. So select a future time, whatever time that is, and this verb tense describes something that happens before that time in the future. So if you pick a future tense, for example, tomorrow is the future, you can describe something that is in the future for you, but happens before tomorrow using this tense. So, for example, before tomorrow, I'll have eaten dinner. Right now, it's the middle of the day. The dinner is in my future, but it's before tomorrow. So we establish this time in the future, as you see in the example here, and then we use the future perfect to talk about an event that is before that and is completed before that. If the action is still true at that time, you'll use the future continuous, which is a video that I released last week, so go check that out. Let's look at some more examples here. Before the end of the year, I'll have finished my course. And let me repeat that again so you can hear that contraction. Before the end of the year, I'll have finished my course. All right. So in the future, I will finish my course. When? Before the end of the year. When exactly? We don't know exactly when, just before the end of the year. It's April when I'm filming this, so maybe August, maybe September, maybe December, but it is before the end of the year. Number 2, when you arrive home, she'll have cleaned up. All right, when will she clean up? In the future, but before you arrive home. Now, there's something else special here. Look at that first part, when you arrive home. What verb tense is that? That is the present tense. I talked about this in a previous video, but if you have a time clause, a clause with subject and verb that tells us when something happens, we do not use the future tense. So here, we can't use the future tense in that part of the sentence because it's a time clause. So we'll use the present tense. When you arrive, present tense, she'll have cleaned up. Future perfect. Now, number 3 is just a reversal because I want you to see that it does not matter which one you put first. What matters is the verb tense. The verb tense tells us what happens before and what is the future point in time. So number 3, she'll have cleaned up when you arrive. Same idea. When you arrive is that future time. And what will she do before you arrive? It's in the future for us, but before you arrive home, she'll have cleaned up. Number 4, it's our negative example. The mechanic won't have finished the car by the time the movie starts. So here, it's a negative. It will not be finished, but it is something that happens before a future time. That future time when the movie starts. And notice, when the movie starts, simple present because it is in a time clause. And the last one, the driver will have picked you up before I return. The driver will have picked you up before I return. So here, when is the driver going to pick you up? In the future, but before I return. All right, now here is your chance to practice. Be careful. This is not only about choosing the correct form. This is also about those time clauses, using the present tense, the simple present in those time clauses, and also contractions. Make sure you get those contractions, but the written ones. So take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can get these right. All right, here we go. The snow will have melted before spring. When will the snow melt? Well, in the future, but before spring. Number 2, the game will have started by the time we get there. So here, when will the game start? In the future, but before we get there. Number 3, when the corn is harvested, the weather won't have started getting cooler. Won't have started to get cooler. This is the negative here, but notice my pronunciation. The weather won't have started. The weather won't have started. We're putting that won't and the have together, and it's a lot to push together into a contraction, but that is the most natural way to do it, and that's the way you should practice. Number 4, you'll have learned the future perfect by the time this video ends. All right, hopefully you got that present tense there in the time clause. And the last one, when you receive the bill, the charge will have already gone through. Hopefully you got this one and you put the word already in the correct spot. My students always ask me about where do these adverbs go. Usually they go before the main verb. So the main verb here is go for the phrasal verb go through, and it is in front of that, just like it usually is. Now, adverbs are forgiving in English. You can move them around and people still understand you, but there is a most natural place to put it. Now, why is this important? Well, it's not a necessary tense. It's not something that you need to know in order to speak English and talk about your ideas, but it is useful for talking about future plans, especially if you're really going into detail about when things will happen, when things will finish, and we need to do this before we do that. You'll hear that when we plan things in English. All right, so again, not necessary, but good to know. You will certainly hear native speakers using it. And while you're here, go ahead and put an example sentence down in the comments. Let me know if you have questions about these ideas, and then show me that you understand it by putting something into the comments. I will look at them, I'll check them, I'll let you know if you did a good job. And don't be afraid to make a mistake. That's why you're here. That's why you're learning English. So as always, thank you so much for being here. If you have ideas for videos, please let me know. If you enjoy them, please like it and subscribe. It means a lot when I see that little number go up. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.